news programs from around the globe each week.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 21CD podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for remembering to like and share if you enjoy this, and follow if you want more, okay? We also have YouTube tiers, as I already mentioned. But listen, today, we're going over something that has been highly anticipated for a while. People have been wanting me to talk about Russ Distar's The Black Awakening concept, okay? This allegedly came to him in some kind of vision, some type of prophetic influence, according to him. And in this framework, the Black Awakening is not just some kind of spooky label or dramatic slogan, but rather a sequence of events that will occur in the end times, okay? It starts with mass confusion and then leads to some type of escalation, which is followed by some kind of trigger event, and then mass compliance. And this is generally considered to be a global thing. This is going to happen on a global scale. And just considering all of the crazy events that are occurring around the world right now, I've got a lot of people who are a little bit older than me who have been telling me, we've never seen anything like this either. It's not just that you're just getting older. It's not like that. There's weird stuff going on. And I thought that this would be a great time to talk about this type of thing. It also has it has a lot to do with NPCs. It has a lot to do with MKUltra. And those are both things that we've been talking a lot about lately. We haven't visited the NPC realm in a while, but I think that it's time to. Just turn on the news and you can see many NPCs at work these days. But the Black Awakening, and we're going to get into some other stuff too. We're going to talk about some of these other situations that are contributing to the idea that the Black Awakening might be in its infancy stage at this point. And we are getting to the point where this may soon happen, okay? I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that there's a lot that is supporting this concept of the Black Awakening happening soon right now. And before I go too far as well, some people think the Black Awakening is going to be an instantaneous thing. Some people think that this is a gradual thing that happens over a long period of time. I am in between. I am in the middle. I believe that it is a gradient that leads up to the awakening. So I think it's been happening for the past few years now. I think we're getting to the point where we are approaching a turning point in just geopolitical and geosocietal ways. I think a lot of things are going to change very soon for people on Earth. That's just kind of my opinion, and based on watching current events, past events, studying history, and everything else, that's why I believe that. And then I think that in the near future, perhaps, nobody knows for sure because nobody knows the time or the hour, right? But in the near future, perhaps, there will be a grand awakening of horrible things that will happen sometime near the end of this gradient. Okay? And when it comes to the Black Awakening, the basic claim is that chaos doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Chaos is cultivated, it's fed, it's timed, it's amplified over time until people are simply so exhausted, so polarized, so overloaded with competing stories that they will basically accept anything that promises any kind of relief from the pressure that they're feeling. And this isn't because people are stupid. Make no mistake, it's because they're spent, they're exhausted, they are tired. Their life force is draining on an unprecedented level. And like I said before, it begins with this confusion, this fog phase, if you will. The numbers aren't going to match. Statistics are wrong. Eyewitnesses disagree. Videos are circulating without context. and every single institution seems to contradict the next. In this confusion stage, the point isn't always to make you believe in a single narrative. It can be to make truth feel simply unreachable, like you don't know what to believe. So you stop trying to sort it out altogether. And once people give up on knowing, they become easier to steer with emotion. Fear, outrage, disgust, tribal loyalty. And I feel like if you just turn on the news on any given day, you see examples of that every single day in nearly every single corner of the world. And then comes the escalation. We got confusion, which makes people anxious, but then you've got escalation. Escalation makes them reactive. Okay, the tempo increases. More incidents, more flashpoints, more killings, more breaking news, more riots, more urgency, more political upheavals. And the people begin to harden. The cults form, the tribes form, the groups begin to shape their own ideas of what they want the future to be like and then move towards those ideas. Moderation starts to look like betrayal. Everybody feels forced to pick one side or another. And every story becomes proof that the other side is dangerous. In that atmosphere, people are no longer evaluating things. They're not thinking with a conscious mind. They are reacting. They are responding to stimuli. After that, a trigger hits. It's sort of a trigger event. It's one event that snaps the whole system into emergency mode. And in this model, it doesn't even have to be some like Nagasaki event, some Hiroshima. It's just an event of some sort that triggers a lot of people. It just has to land when the public is already primed and ready to receive it, when the emotional power is at an all-time high. And the trigger is basically the switch that turns tension into action, okay? Arguments become conflicts. We can no longer talk things through. And confusion is turned into this elaborate and drastic momentum. And then, of course, the end state is, as you would probably expect, mass compliance. And this isn't in a sort of mind-controlled Stranger Things, MKUltra cartoon type sense. It's more like the predictable human reaction to prolonged stress. After enough shocks, people start to crave somebody to guide them, a strong hand on the wheel, if you will. They trade complexity for slogans, process for decisive force, rights for stability. The public starts begging for the things it would have resisted in calmer times, like a police state, because anything feels better than the constant chaos that they've been experiencing. And crucially, Dizdar frames this as not only political. This is not simply a political event. In his view, it is also spiritual and technical at the same time as it is political. So narrative warfare on the surface is indicative of something much darker and demonic underneath. The technical side is what you can track, right? What you can see on TV, the propaganda, the manipulation, the psychological ops, the mass suggestion, the recruitment of things, the manufactured outrage, the pushing in a general direction, right? The spiritual side is what he insists is powering all of this. It is the fuel beneath it all. It's sort of a predatory current that feeds on fear and division and deception, because panic is easier to steer, and because a society in constant emergency kind of stops asking the higher questions about truth and about consciousness, about conscience in general, and about God. So let's look at some crazy stuff that's already been occurring in 2026, now that we kind of have a background on what this Black Awakening process looks like. And again, I'm not saying that 2026 is the year of the Black Awakening. As a matter of fact, I don't think it is this year, but I think personally it is soon. We will just have to wait and see. But in the grand scheme of things, it certainly looks like something has got to happen sooner, and probably when I say sooner, I mean sooner rather than later. It doesn't appear that this is going to, the way that things are currently, can stand. A lot of the things that I just mentioned, you might already recognize as things that are prevalent in the world. There's been this weird little signal coming out of Peru that I've been tracking, and I should have put it under the microscope earlier, like on January 1st, but I just breezed over it, and now I'm coming back to it. If you're looking for a sort of first episode of 2026 kind of omen, this was sitting right there on the table of topics that I wanted to discuss, but I just didn't end up hitting it. But every year, Peruvian shamans and traditional healers gather for a kind of New Year ritual, and this is televised, where they don't just predict like fortune cookie astrology, they do magic. They perform the prediction. They're not just trying to guess the future so much as they're trying to make the world kind of perform in a way that they want it to. So jungle and mountain and coastal practitioners, they all kind of come together, these shaman, these medicine men and women, and they show up in these bright ponchos and headdresses, and they work a ceremony into a theatrical performance on camera. But the point is not just spectacle, and it's not always received as just spectacle. The point is the targeting. And they've targeted celebrities before publicly, as a matter of fact. Back in the World Cup qualifying a couple years ago, they staged a ritual. For those who don't know what the World Cup is, it's like the big soccer thing, okay? They staged a ritual aimed straight at Neymar. He's one of the great soccer players of Brazil. And there was going to be a game, Peru versus Brazil, so they tied up this effigy of him because they wanted him to become injured so that he could not assist in the game against Peru. And one of the shamans said that they had neutralized him by tying his feet so that he wouldn't be in shape to run or play well at all. Another shaman said the goal was to cloud Neymar's mind so he couldn't achieve what he is looking for. And then outside the national stadium, they set up this altar with swords and amulets and flags and photos of players on both teams, especially Neymar, of course. And they blew a conch shell like they were announcing something or whatever. And then they called on the father's son, okay? And before that, they reported, this is kind of common, they are reported to constantly be on ayahuasca, which is this kind of hallucinogenic brew that is framed as a kind of doorway into the spirit world. I'm sure you guys have heard of it before. About a month later, on October 17th in 2023, Neymar did indeed suffer a serious knee injury while playing for Brazil against Uruguay. And this is an injury that ended up sidelining him for a long stretch. I'm not saying that the ritual did it, but they're saying that the ritual definitely did it. So that kind of brings us, that shows the amount of power, I say that loosely, power, that these alleged shaman have, these magic practitioners have, right? And a lot of people follow them simply because they can appear to do these types of things. They did their late December New Year's ceremony again. This time, they weren't talking about soccer players, they were talking about world leaders. And on a beach near Lima, shamans sprinkled flowers into the sand, and they burned incense. They crossed their swords. They had swords and spears and stuff over large posters of political figures. And these included, some of these posters, by the way, were getting stomped on, spit on. They had stuff poured all over them. They were grinding them into the earth. And in the lineup of these political figures was Donald Trump, Nicolas Maduro, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Zelensky, okay? These aren't just predictions, they're targets that are placed on a ceremonial table. That's important to realize. And the proclamations were pretty dramatic. One of the shamans warned that the U.S. should prepare because Trump would fall seriously ill and perhaps even die in 2026, which is quite a statement to make. And then, of course, they went after Venezuela, where they said they saw Nicolas Maduro defeated Interestingly enough, they did say specifically that he would flee Venezuela and not be captured. So whether that's indicative of him being bought out by the U.S., and then Donald Trump, instead of capturing him, simply showed up to take him away because of some sort of deal or not, who knows? But the Maduro thing does appear to have come true, at least in some capacity. They also predicted, of course, the end of the war in Ukraine, which people have been talking about for a couple years now. But they said that this year would be the last year of war between Russia and Ukraine. And all of this, you could just say, well, this is just random medicine men. This is random shaman just doing random things. And when you see the footage, it does indeed look quite crazy. But it's a very interesting set of prophecies, if you will. And when we consider that some of the other things going on in the world seem to align with the Black Awakening and these Peruvian predictions, especially recently, a bigger picture starts to unfold in my mind. The rapid advances of Palantir and AI that has snuck under the radar, the war in Ukraine that continues to rage for some reason, even though there's almost nothing left there to destroy, the disruption of society, the whole Gaza thing. Culture continues to be dismantled through unbridled immigration, leading to the introduction of terrorism and sleeper cells and mass chaos throughout basically every first world country in the world. And of course, there's many economic strains on pretty much most individuals. Most of us who aren't millionaires or billionaires or something like that are going through some kind of financial inconvenience. There's a lot of pressure on a lot of people, is what I'm trying to say. It's not just like a certain class is under pressure. It seems to be worldwide. There is this pressure brewing. And the story of the riots unfolding in Iran, Peru, the USA, and even Russia and China, these are all parts of the same formula for the Black Awakening. Iran is kind of the perfect case study in how modern chaos gets packaged, if you will. You'll hear the numbers thrown around. 500 dead, 2,000 dead, 3,000, 12,000, and as many as 20,000. Because that spread of information is in of itself the weapon. That's also how agencies like Mossad work. Okay, and in a country where information can go dark fast because the internet gets taken down, nobody outside can really cleanly count the numbers in real time. And that's exactly where this rage and this chaos machine lives. If the number is small, you're told you're downplaying slaughter. If it's huge, you're told you're swallowing propaganda. Either way, you're steered into this same emotional lane. And that's outrage, looking for somebody to blame. Who is responsible for this? Who do we fight for? Who do we fight against? And then you create a divide between you and the person who lives next to you, your neighbor. And then comes the intervene versus don't intervene trap. I don't want to look like a racist, I don't want to look like a supporter of this, I don't want to look like a supporter of that argument. If the U.S. moves, it validates the regime's claim that the uprising was foreign piloted, right? If the U.S. doesn't move, it becomes proof that we let it happen. All of this seems to just create more and more of a divide amongst regular people. And it's just one thing in the pool of things that we can fight about, creating more chaos on the planet, more divide, more false narratives that are allegedly true, more true narratives that are allegedly false to argue about. And then you slide back into America, and we find that same fog showing up here. Remember how I told you in the last video, don't die in the fog? This is what I'm talking about. Same kind of story, not as drastic, not as much death, I'll give it that. But, same kind of thing. We got Minneapolis, Portland, New York, Chicago. Take your pick. Protests erupting everywhere. Crowds becoming increasingly violent, extremely violent. They're stopping people's cars now, just random civilians' cars, and pulling them out and demanding to know whether or not they support Trump or support ICE or whatever. You've got people getting shot and killed. You've got, protesters getting shot in the face with rubber bullets and going permanently blind because of it. You've got this hatred that is brewing between these different types of people. You have people being followed on the street who are just walking to work or walking to get a pizza or something around the corner, being harassed simply because protesters want to know what side they're on. So one side will call it uprising, the other side will call it insurrection, and then you've got this whole battle that exists between federal and local agencies that start playing blame ping pong, and the public gets herded into these camps, if you will, these tribes where the facts matter less than which narrative feels like it protects you. That's how a city-level event becomes a national psychic cloud, a fog, a weather pattern. Not because it's necessarily new, but because it's been optimized for outrage, for polarization, for speed. And it is moving very, very quickly these days. The unhappiness is spreading like a disease. And this is kind of where you can tee up Rust Isdar and the Black Awakening as a framework. It's not really a prophecy as much as it is a warning about society driven into perpetual crisis mode, where fear becomes a sort of governance. Confusion is the weapon, it's the tool, and people start begging for control, for hard control, just to make the noise stop. And the uncomfortable question that remains hanging in the air is simple. What if it's not about what's happening in Iran? What if it's not about what's happening in Minneapolis or Venezuela or Ukraine or Russia or Gaza or England? What if the point is training the public to live inside of this rolling, never-ending, engineered emergency until some magical solution will arrive out of nowhere and it will feel like relief? This will probably start with a police state of some sort and a sort of global militarized enforcement of whatever the governments of the world, the NWO feels, the New World Order, for those who don't know, feels like needs to happen. So they'll enact it with brute force, and then it will be reinforced and eventually replaced by AI and databases. Okay? Everybody will have an identity that can be tracked in Palantir. Everybody will be able, they're saying Bill Gates is going to have enough satellites in the sky that he will be able to find and track anybody on the world at any given time, no matter where they are, because every single acre of land will be able to be monitored by his satellites. And then you've got Starlink. Pretty soon you're not even going to be able to see the stars like you used to because of all of the satellites that will be in the air. That's when they will be able to enact holograms. That's when they will be able to put monsters in the sky. That's when they will be able to fake religious events, spiritual events, because people will not even be able to believe what is happening. So it must be a religious or spiritual event. It must be something spiritual. So the Black Awakening is kind of written as both a warning and a blueprint. It describes this hidden class of operatives, the chosen ones, as they allegedly call themselves. This is just according to Rust Isdar, but they call themselves the chosen ones. And they've been embedded in society for years, and they're designed to activate in a coordinated burst of internal violence. The chosen ones, for those who are believers, those are not those who will be raptured. These chosen ones are the ones who are evil, and they're going to rise up during the awakening and cause this coordinated burst of violence. The title Chosen One is presented as kind of private knowledge, not known by many, and treated as a badge of honor by the group itself. It's a bit like being part of a terrorist group. And in Russ Distar's logic, these people are not visibly separated from the public. They are secret weapons. They are embedded in the public. They are blended into society so effectively that detection is almost impossible, unless somebody already knows what exactly to look for. For those of you who have been following me for a while, you've heard my theory on the concept of NPCs, how there are numerous types of NPCs, non-player characters. There are NPCs who are not of humankind. They just look like us, but they are actually demonic or biologically manipulated entities that have just, throughout time, gradually began to look more and more like humans. You could call them the spawn of Nephilim if you want. Then you have the NPCs who are dancing on TikTok just because they're retarded. Okay, and then you have those people are usually the ones who are also in the streets rioting. Not all the time, but those are the ones who are usually enacting violence upon people mindlessly, not because they're criminals, but just because their emotional state is so vulnerable that they can be pushed. Kind of like I mentioned in the introduction to this episode, they're just highly manipulable beings, but human regardless. And then you have the NPCs also who just don't care. They don't contribute to the world in any way. They don't speak to their fellow man. They don't try to awaken anybody. They don't try to put anybody to sleep. They don't try to get involved with anything. They are just non-players. They have no consequence in the world whatsoever. Okay? So that's kind of where that comes from. And I believe that some of these are these chosen ones, if you will, that are secret weapons, especially the Nephilim spawn ones that have been blended effectively into society because we can't separate them from our fellow man. We don't know what they are. We can't tell just by looking at them that they are different. But I'm sure that you guys have talked to somebody at least once in your life that you've kind of been like, is this guy even human? Is this for real? What is happening right now? The longer that I do this show, the more often I specifically encounter situations like that. And I'm not saying that I know what to look for. Certainly I don't. I'm also not saying my NPC concept is right. I'm just saying that this is kind of my idea as I have it. But Russ Dizdar also emphasizes the depth of placement here. That a lot of these chosen ones, these beings that will be weaponized at the Black Awakening, are placed so deep in their assigned areas. And that kind of implies a deliberate geographic and institutional distribution. So probably in government, probably in places of high population, places of potential conflict. And he frames it as a sort of surveillance in reverse. The public thinks that it's watching the world, but in reality, these embedded assets, these chosen ones, have been watching us for a very long time. And they've been waiting for the bat signal, the proverbial bat signal in the air. A major point is how public labeling functions as camouflage in these events. In the Black Awakening, the text says the media calls these individuals the crazies. That brought to mind that movie that came out about zombies. Do you guys remember that zombie movie that came out years ago? I was actually still in the army when it came out. It was called literally The Crazies, and it was about a zombie uprising. The theory of zombies becomes more and more prevalent in my mind every single day because it does feel like civilization, like society, people in general, are behaving like zombies more and more regularly on a widespread basis. But anyway, Russ Dizdar refers to these people as the crazies, but he insists that that label in of itself is a misdirection, just like zombie is, because they are actually more like sleeper soldiers that nobody wants to hear about because it sounds, well, crazy. Kind of like MKUltra, kind of like super assassins. And the idea here is that society is kind of conditioned to dismiss these anomalies as mental instability rather than any kind of organized preparation, and that this dismissal is assisted by a long period, that's the gradient, in which attention has been absorbed by other radical terrorists. And we've been seeing soft disclosure about this kind of thing for a very long time now. The biggest example of that is Stranger Things, which is literally about MKUltra and the Montauk Project, in which children are turned into super soldiers against their will and oftentimes without even knowing it. Russ even wonders whether that distraction is planned, kind of an echo of a classic intelligence concept. If you've been waiting in a satanic shadow for a very long time, simply awaiting for their call to come in. And what follows is described deliberately as no regular conventional war. It's going to be absolutely bizarre. It is not troops from another nation. It's more like a civil war, except Russ says that it's even worse. It's like a civil butchering. It's a purge. And that phrasing kind of matters because it describes a form of collapse that doesn't require any kind of invasion, any kind of airplanes in the sky or boats on the beach. It weaponizes neighbors against neighbors. It uses confusion and institutional paralysis. The systems that you have relied on collapse beneath you. In modern real-world terms, this is the fear that a state can be essentially destabilized from within through polarization alone, but also including destabilizing incidents and just this cascading distrust amongst everyday civilians. And all of these conditions, whether they're engineered or exploited, are now accelerated in the modern age by social media, by TikTok, by viral videos, rumors just being spread on WhatsApp. And that is a spiral, a chaos that continues and continues. It's like a snowball. It has this snowball effect. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. The faster it rolls, the further it rolls. The mechanism for activating this civil butchering, if you will, is framed as a trigger system. The chosen ones, these secret embedded agents, need a call. They need a trigger or a cue to activate what was buried deep within them. Because you need a sudden, all-consuming attack. The attacks that occur over time are not necessarily enough. So there needs to be one coordinated assault. And in the book, The Black Awakening, Russ claims that the sleepers contain sleeper personalities that have been created since childhood. They are described, as I said before, like zombies that are kind of lying in their carved out inner tombs inside of themselves. Sounds a lot like NPCs, too. The way we think about NPCs, these beings that aren't really present. They don't have an inner monologue. They don't converse with themselves. They don't really think about things. They are just pushed, and they are waiting for the magic word. Again, MKUltra. We don't need to keep saying it, but I think it's important to keep saying it because that is what it is. There is a type of trauma programming. There's an internal compartmentalization that remains dormant until a specific cue or something is delivered, essentially. They're called upon, whether it's a signal, a frequency, a sound, a word. Russ also says that the call that activates them is something that is spiritual, so it might not be something that everybody hears, but it's powerful. It's powerful on a supernatural level, but also has something to do with technology. And I resonate with that. I think that is obviously the case because we are living in a technological world right now. And with the rise of AI, with this Palantir thing that's coming out where everybody is trackable, everybody is touchable, and with the idea that we will all soon have some sort of AI implemented into our biology, as the transhuman agenda turns into the post-human result. I think that obviously there is a technological element to this. I think that within the next 5 years, similarly to how we have become so reliant on the cell phone, we will become reliant on embedded technological parts that are placed literally on our body, connected to us somehow. Maybe an injection, maybe something like Neuralink where it's attached to your brain, maybe simply some kind of chip that is put into you. And these things are essentially going to be able to record your thoughts, record your everyday processes. Your biological system will be able to be monitored. So doctors will be able, if you go to the doctor and you're like, I don't know what's wrong with me, my stomach hurts, they'll be able to read the data that has been presented on the chip that is installed in you, and they will be able to monitor your biological issues to see what isn't performing correctly, where the issue might be based on your chemical reactions inside your body, stuff like that. It's going to be a really weird time to be alive. So you can imagine how if everybody has some sort of technological implement into their biology, it wouldn't be hard to activate people using that. Right now, we say that people are activated through visual or audible cues if they're victims of MKUltra. They have a handler that says something that puts them into a hallucination or something and is able to then control them. But if there's a technological element, then that almost makes a lot more sense, if you ask me. But it insists either way that the activation is not merely psychological conditioning, that is just a part of it. It's not just a mystical sort of experience, but a fusion, a technical delivery that is paired with a supernatural power. And this is where my concept of the gods of modern technology comes from. You have this idea that demonic influences, the old gods, as we have been following throughout history, they just change bodies all the time. They change the forms that humanity is willing to look at them as. So, in the ancient Greek and Roman days, a lot of the times they'll say they were literally physical. If you go back into biblical days, you have the Nephilim, you have the fallen angels, you have the ones that are visible to the human eye. They talk about them, they write about them, they are afraid of them, they are being eaten by giants. These types of things. But as mankind grows less and less afraid of them, figures out they can destroy them when inevitably they are being destroyed by them, as mankind becomes more and more, quote-unquote, advanced, if you will, these demonic forces need to find different hosts that are not as visible to mankind. AI and the rapid advancement of technology, in my opinion, is that vehicle. You have these, if you want a real-world sort of nod, this is where the modern imagination naturally turns to the technologies that can deliver cues at scale. You've got broadcast systems, emergency alerts, implants, coordinated media blasts, algorithmic amplification, targeted messaging, and to the contemporary anxieties around AI-generated persuasion, deep fakes, botnets, mass behavioral influence. All of that will be able to be injected straight into your brain. You won't have to think about it anymore. It'll just be a part of your reality. And this gives a really interesting perspective when it comes to the mark of the beast. I don't know if that is going to be the mark of the beast or not. I don't know if having one of these technological implementations is going to make you a bearer of the mark. But if it is something that steers you away from the right way of things by default, because you cannot avoid being steered away, kind of makes a little bit of sense. But Russ goes on, and he says that this network, some of the chosen ones are said to come from old rogue military black ops projects, ancient bloodlines, systems of military effectiveness that have been in operation for perhaps even centuries. And that will also combine with these new super soldiers, these new individuals, these new chosen ones who can be controlled. And they're called, coincidentally enough, monarchs. Just like the Monarch Project. Here we go again. The Monarch Project is, the symbol is the monarch butterfly. It's another mind control project. And he talks about these monarch butterflies being the only insects that migrate to every single continent, and interprets that as a sort of symbolism, that these chosen ones are planted everywhere. And that is a distribution claim. That is what makes this kind of a global event versus just a USA thing. It's a global dispersion. It's not just local. And in the real world, people will often connect that kind of imagery to sort of transnational power structures. In my last video, I was talking about all these different governments, all of these different agendas. But they all have some type of intelligence alliance. They all have some sort of private defense contracting ecosystem that works with another. And there are networks that sit between state and corporate powers. So it also gestures that the idea of assets embedded across sectors exist, the way that modern states and private actors cultivate influence through institutions rather than actual standing armies. Of course, Russ also talks about these military labs that exist underground with experiments that are filled with torture and human cruelty, like we have been softly disclosed to in shows like The Stranger Things. So he says that the doctors knew how to do the doubling, just like the old Nazis did, and adds that many of them talked about a Dr. Green. Doubling is presented as a method of splitting or essentially replicating identity, like in that movie Split. You're starting to see how this concept is not necessarily unique just to Russ Dizdar. And all of that kind of creates this internal division that can be switched on command, because you have a standing army, if you will, not a standing army, that's the wrong way to phrase it. You have a sleeper organization, which is global, and all of these individuals within this sleeper cult of chosen ones have alternate identities. And all of a sudden, one day, they will not be the identity that they are now. They will be completely different. And I don't think that the Nazi comparison is subtle either. It is meant to position the alleged program as an evolution of extreme coercive experimentation, similar to how so many German soldiers converted to the Nazi agenda. There's a real-world parallel, too, without endorsing this claim, and that would be the documented fact that modern states have historically pursued clandestine research into behavior, into interrogation, influence, and that secrecy tends to create sort of a moral darkness because the oversight is weak. So you have this host of people who are living in evil ways because they're not sure who they are. They're not sure what is right and wrong, and they live in this sort of ambiguous realm. There's a lot of people that you guys probably watch on YouTube who claim to exist in a type of realm like I'm describing. People who believe that they have been victims of bloodline manipulation, people who have gone into the military and claim that they have been captured, if you will, on a deeply mental or spiritual level, people who believe that they are MKUltra victims or victims of programs like the Monarch program, all of that type of stuff. This is what they're talking about. Russ goes on and he starts saying that the operation is hidden and extremely secret, but that secrecy wasn't all threats and fear. There was a thick, dark power that covered these people and continues to cover these people. It claims that the system is run with the help of hell itself, demons and Satan, and that the secrecy was their law. To tell anybody about it would essentially mean you have to die. If I tell you, I'd have to kill you, type stuff. And then that also amplifies the Nazi comparison, of course, except these people, these chosen ones, are allegedly 1,000 times worse than the Nazis because they have some sort of actual demonic influence beyond just human evil. They are essentially, how do I phrase this? They are essentially in coordination on an intimate, individual level with specific demons. I suggest that human institutions are not the true authors of the plan. The government might not know what it is doing. It is being pushed along. Rather, the government, the human institutions, they are instruments of a sort of non-human intelligence, sometimes knowingly, sometimes not. So if you're looking for something in the modern world that pertains to that, you could look at the way that people describe certain systems today. Algorithms, unaccountability, taxation without representation, Big Brother, except the text, The Black Awakening by Russ Dizdar, literalizes that inhuman feeling into an actual non-human designer. So the narrative also includes an aristocratic or dynastic element. It claims that these chosen ones often come from older European generations and family bloodlines. You guys have probably heard a lot about that. There's power in the blood, right? They believe that the blood is what makes them as powerful as they are. Don't get that confused with my slogan, "The life is in the blood," please. That comes from the Bible and references the blood of Jesus Christ as our redemption. The blood that they are talking about is it's sacred to them in a sick kind of way, in an incestuous, in an ancient type of purity type of way. The implication is that occult hierarchy is hereditary and that ritual identity is basically transmitted through lineage. So in the modern conspiracy ecosystem, that would be the place where people reflexively connect the dots, if you will, to secret society imagery, to elite initiation, closed networks, secret societies that operate beneath the shadows, that change names constantly. The idea that power circulates essentially through a small set of families and institutions, the global elite, the Illuminati, etc., etc. But in the Black Awakening, it states that the culmination, after waiting so long, that these bloodlines will proclaim that their time had come, and they will name the day this very evil hour, and the event that will occur at this very evil hour is the Black Awakening. There you go. And that is the sudden event that will occur in the very evil hour, this Black Awakening. So the Black Awakening then is a sort of leveling of everything. It's a deliberate destabilization meant to open the doors to total control for a new world order. And it explicitly ties itself to this new order and adds a critical point that even if you don't believe in an antichrist, because a lot of people simply won't and don't, right? Even if you don't believe in an antichrist, they do. A leader of some kind of supernatural origin, the people, the entities, the chosen ones, the bloodlines that are making this happen, they do believe in the Antichrist. They do believe that there is something supernatural about to occur. And that brings it back to the whole demon aspect. This is not just some sort of political movement. This is eschatology. The end goal is a ruler who is not just a simple dictator like Maduro, or some people think Trump, or Putin, or any of these, Xi Jinping. None of these people all pale in comparison to the leader that the chosen ones of the Black Awakening are ushering in. He's a supernatural figure. And the Bible kind of says, look, he'll look like a man, but he won't be a man. So in real world terms, this is where the narrative kind of overlaps with the contemporary fears about the New World Order governance, centralized global control, a passport that is universal. But the text locates the heart of that control in more of a spiritual deception rather than some sort of government. There's a part of the book that is called Before the New World Order, and it makes that strategy pretty explicit. It outlines. I recommend, if you want to read the book, I will include a link to the book in the description of this video. But it says that the chaos must come before the new order. And that makes sense, right? And Russ kind of provides a reason, too. He says, too many Christians, there will be too many churches, too many politicians and military men and militiamen who would stand in the way because they see what's coming. Because some people will be able to see the writing on the wall. All the Second Amendment bros who are raising their families off the land, stuff like that, they will all stand in the way. The people who believe in Jesus and are waiting for his return and are not fooled by this, they will be in the way. They must be removed. Political people who, even though I believe they are very few and far in between, who maybe are actually trying to make the world a better place, who basically control small armies, they will need to be pushed aside. They're going to stand in the way not only of the Luciferians, but also of the new coming leader, the Antichrist, whoever he may be. And it says that they believe that they must have powers unleashed and that the world will need to be forced to its knees if they're going to get them to follow the Antichrist, essentially indicating that there will be no way out of this because of the mass chaos, death, and destruction that is unleashed. And that the motto will essentially become something like either follow or die. Not literally, but figuratively. If you do not comply, you will simply be killed. And we can see nods to this in Revelation as well. That's, of course, the order through terror concept, and it creates these conditions that will be in a regular element of society that are so unbearable that the public will welcome any kind of control as a rescue, as a relief, as some kind of release from the pain, something to make anything better, even just a little bit. When populations are frightened, they tend to trade their liberties for stability. That's the whole reason that the Constitution was kind of written. So these extraordinary measures that at one point you would never want, all of a sudden they become more normal. Let's just take the example of a military state. There's a lot of right-wing people who want the military and the army and the National Guard and the federal agencies to go in and effectively inhabit Minneapolis and enact a military state right now. But normally, they're against that kind of stuff, and they threaten the government with the Second Amendment. So you already are seeing this little tiny nod to something that is happening in real time, where it appears that certain people want a military state in states like Minneapolis. But if you look at the bigger picture, is that just a stepping stone in the direction that we won't be able to return from? In the Black Awakening, the book, Russ says that this is not accidental. It's the whole point. It says revelations come from the Spirit of God about the ramping up of dark spirits, and insists that only Scripture really gives an accurate and sort of preemptive revelation on this ancient hate. And it claims that the infinite Spirit of God can give the heads up on what the demonic underworld is essentially planning, and that God's omnipresence means he knows where they are and what they are up to. Which, of course, implies that we need only to have faith that this is all part of God's plan. But without this insight from God, we would simply be guessing. One of the verses that he mentions is 1 Timothy 4, where he says that there will be a ramping up of imposter spirits and doctrines of demons. The Holy Spirit in that case is expressly and emphatically and factually predicted that very seducing dark spirits would come in the last days. These spirits are willing vessels, and they provide writings to influence many and pursue a single agenda. They pull people away from God, from Christ, from faith. They establish an alternative way of things. And now, in the modern time, we have feeds, we have influencers, we have synthetic media, we have ideology that is packaged as a new type of lifestyle. We have this agenda to be everything is fluid, like water. There's no defining features between man and woman or any of that. And so you kind of start to see parallels. He also mentions 2 Thessalonians 2, where he talks about how the supernatural work of Satan is a secret power of lawlessness and counterfeit miracles, signs and wonders. It warns that these phenomena rise alongside every sort of evil that deceives those who embrace it. The demonic is described as kind of this thing cloaked to look like angels or ancestors and friends and safety, that they offer spiritual experience, but those experiences are designed to ensure deception. And then, of course, it points to Revelation 18 and the rise of Babylon, this sort of counterfeit spiritual system that's so vast that the final judgment is massive. It's a culmination of demonic work that it will pollute and deceive the whole world over. There will be spiritual adultery in the billions. And that is what is rising among us right now. Before the Antichrist apocalyptic unveiling, there will be a proverbial bulging spiritual presence, if you will. It will be sensed and present. The chaos that opens the door for these satans in human flesh. He calls them Homo Satanus. They come by being ramped up by dark power. And it's a spiritual force that builds and builds and builds. And then in the Black Awakening, he reiterates that the Black Awakening, the revolt, is packed with that deceptive secret power from head to toe. And when released, it will be like a planetary shock wave that has been unleashed from hell itself. It will be the great revolt of rebellion of 2 Thessalonians 2. It'll be the supernatural work of Satan himself. It'll be a catastrophe that we've yet to see anything like as modern man. And after this occurs, many are going to be crying for stability and peace, for some kind of savior. And sometime in the midst of this, the call will come and chaos will erupt. And if you want to see something about this in the real world, again, just turn on the news. People will be looking for any type of rescue whatsoever. And so things that you can expect to maybe see when all of this is going down, signs that you should be looking for as you walk around town, as you look at the news, as you investigate the world around you, you should be looking for things like an ungodly evil presence that appears to reside everywhere. Explosions and fires, war everywhere. The electrical grid going down, failures everywhere. Phones and cell phones being shut off. The internet being attacked. Assigned murder, slaughter of millions, genocide. You'll see sabotaged responses in the military, in the law enforcement, and in fire and rescue. They'll become increasingly unreliable as the forces of evil take over. That will assist the chaos in spreading. It will make people even more unable to find relief. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about man will long to die, but death will not come to them. Martial law and troops trying to get on the streets, but there will be too much anarchy and riots and looting. And so not even the armies will be able to stop the chaos that is occurring. There will be rampant shootings and crazed killers everywhere. Blood and bodies will run in the streets. Blood will run, bodies will stack. Civil war opportunists will unleash all their might, and the battles on the streets will occur. There will be war, both on a global level, but also on a micro level. There will be an absolutely crazy theological anger that will rise up. All these cults, all these different little groups will seek to take advantage of the chaos and the lawlessness to enact their own little pockets of society, like in Fallout, where they have all these different like groups that try to live with their own theologies. That will happen. And trust me, they're not going to be trying to follow any sort of good type of law. You'll see a lot of natural acts of God, like bad weather, chaotic earth events that may erupt. You'll see the government shut down on all levels. It'll be hard to get gas. It'll be hard to get food. You won't be able to get money out of the banks. The banks will shut down. And all of this will occur over and over and over, day in and day out. The bodies will stack. The bombs will blow up. There will be poisons in the air and on the ground, chemical and biological weapons on every single level. People will be hiding, surviving, fleeing to the hills, waiting for some kind of rescue. Everybody will wonder if this is the end of the world. But that's where they get you, because the goal is not to annihilate a society or nation. The Black Awakening is not the ultimate goal. It is a tool to clear the way for the new order. And this is where everybody is going to be bamboozled. Because the new order, the New World Order, the NWO, it comes after all of this. The New World Order is phase 2. The ultimate goal, after all this, is a controlled global government and a super military system for a final war to try to stop the returning Christ. According to Russ, his book claims that mind control projects, technology, and the process for creating multiple personality disorder exist for this purpose. And this is why the chosen ones are here, and why Luciferians have done what they've done, why these secret organizations, why these CIA ops, this is why they're doing it. And they don't always know that they're doing it. And then the satanic powers will come into being. But the planners want and need more spiritual powers released. They need the influence to lead the whole world astray, as Revelation 12 says. So a new unified spiritual system that we've come to call Babylon must rise. And it must rise in the hearts of billions. It cannot be this little subsect where only 50% of the world likes it, or 20% of the world, or whatever. You know, like right now, I don't know exactly the amount of Christians there are in the world compared to other religions, but the point is that Babylon must contain the majority, nearly all. And this satanic power, the mission is essentially to buffer the unveiling of the Antichrist and suppress any type of resistance. There will basically be this feeling that there's no way to escape the NWO, this new way of things. This is the new way of things. There will be this feeling that humanity has evolved, that humanity has come through and emerged on the other side as something better, that order will return to the world. And after all the chaos ends, some of the electrical grids, the phones, maybe even the internet will come back on. People will begin to clean up their cities. They'll be picking up the pieces and the bodies. New soldiers will appear on the streets, many who were cloaked agents of the Black Awakening. And a new voice will be heard by millions, if not billions. And it's, according to Russ, this voice of a very ancient hate. And for the confused world, it's going to sound like comfort. It's going to feel like security. It's going to be something they've been waiting for. And the voice is described as unlike anything that anyone has ever heard. It'll emanate with supernatural power. It'll be very obvious. People may faint at the very hearing of it. And most will not be able to know that it is evil. Most will not be able to know that it is the Antichrist. And in the Black Awakening, Russ says he frames this voice as the same ancient hate that was once heard in the heavenlies, where angels listened, agreed, and ultimately descended to earth to corrupt it because of the influence that they heard. This was just the book, Russ Disdar's book, The Black Awakening, is a 500-page book. So, as you can imagine, there's a lot to chew on there. And like I said, the download will be in the description. This is a public domain work, so don't worry, you're not committing any illegal acts by downloading it. And if you're interested in any of the things that I just said, or perhaps what the end of the world may look like, because again, this is just one man with a vision, okay? There's many men with many visions of the end times across all of time. So which one you choose to look at, I don't know how you decide, but in my perspective, when I read The Black Awakening and I combine it with my theory on NPCs, MKUltra, the gods of modern technology, AI and Palantir, how they're tracking people already, the satellites in the sky, the way they're going to be able to project visions into people's brains and into people's atmospheres, the way that they are going to be able to know when you're doing anything that you're doing, the way that everything will become automated and it will feel like you are living in a waking prison every single day of your life. As I was pondering all of that, it occurred to me that there will reach a moment where the chaos will have to be so bad that the Antichrist is actually something that is accepted by everybody, or at least the majority. And that the Antichrist something devastating will have to happen for the Antichrist to even have an impact on very many people. Because we get these false flags all the time. 3-Eye Atlas, aliens, UFOs. We get these kinds of tests, if you will, of things that could be portrayed as the Antichrist or something that is going to trigger the apocalypse. And it almost feels like we are being tested, where they're seeing how awake we are, how receptive we are. But eventually one of these crises is actually going to occur, and it will result in much death and devastation. And we will have the need we will feel the need to be rescued. Cue the Antichrist. And so in that perspective, when reading Revelation and all of that, Russ's book here, it does provide something that you can kind of look at and use to perhaps loosely, but imagine what the end of the world may be like in such a chaotic, demonically influenced state that everybody feels the need to be rescued. And then, in an effort to stop Jesus Christ from taking back what's his, the whole world will be made evil under this Antichrist. And that's what makes his redemption of us so amazing. Thanks for listening, guys. If you liked this episode, consider giving me a like or a follow, maybe a share if you're feeling real frisky. And if you want to support the show even more, you can sign up for a YouTube tier. I love all you guys. Don't be disheartened. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Daddy God got us, okay? It's going to be all right. The life is in the blood.